The American dream come true. Honey, I'm home. But dreams have a nasty habit of going bad when you're not looking.
With the Max Payne remake being just around the corner, or already out depending on when you watch this video, I thought it'd be a great opportunity to revisit the original game so you can experience it in all of its glory before playing the remakes. Here on Retro Renew, what we like to do is preserve older games in order to give new players the best experience possible, and also returning fans a reason to come back. So let's explore versions, mods, settings, and emulators for this game to answer the question, what is the best way to play Max Payne 1? The first thing you need to do is obviously get your hands on a copy of the game, and that can be done through today's sponsor, Instant Gaming. Max Payne is on here for just under $5, and due to how speedy Instant Gaming's checkout and code delivery is, you can be playing the game within literal seconds. You can get so many games on here, old and new, for prices that are lower than Steam. A great feature on the website is that if you pre-order a new game and the price drops before release, you'll be refunded the difference, guaranteeing you get the best deal possible. If you're interested, then use my affiliate link in the description or the pinned comment to help support the channel while saving you some money on games. We are mainly going to be looking at the PC version for this video, as there's not really much reason in my opinion to even look at the console versions. Whilst the Xbox port running on the ZEMU emulator looks pretty close to the PC version, it still will never beat what we can do on PC. And when I tried it out, I couldn't seem to find widescreen support, so I had to play it in 4:3, as well as the comic panels not showing up at all. The PS2 version running on the PCSX2 emulator has a widescreen patch, but it gets even more downgrades like removed areas, downgraded overall graphics, and way more loading screens. The performance was pretty bad for me as well. Now the reason that PC is better isn't just because we can tweak and mod it, but it's because the game was originally made for the PC, and so it's the most definitive version of it. So let's focus in on the PC version and see what we can do in order to fix it and get it running perfectly on modern hardware. We'll also do some extra tweaks in order to get some modern features back in the game, like proper anti-aliasing. There is so much going on with this PC version that we need to fix, and there are two ways of going about it. The first is the tedious manual way, which could take you anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour. Or there's option 2, which is what I'm going to suggest in this video, and that's to use a complete FixPack. The complete FixPack essentially has the purpose of correcting many of the known issues with the game in such a simple, user-friendly way in the form of an installer. The installer also lets you select different fixes and upgrades depending on your preferences. Let me show you how easy it is to get installed. First, make sure you have a clean install of the game. If you've added any tweaks or mods, just uninstall the game, delete the game directory folder, and reinstall it. Now download the pack via the link in the description and run the installer. Point it to the directory where Max Payne is installed. There are tips as to where you will have it depending on where you got the game from. It will then ask you to select components. There are high-res textures that you can enable if you want to. They are scaled using some AI techniques, with some being handmade. 95% of the textures have been replaced, and they look pretty great. Obviously, you need to set expectations with this kind of stuff, as things like signs and text tend to be not perfect. Of course, this is up to you if you want these textures, but for me, I like the increased fidelity that they bring. This won't hinder performance much at all, as long as you have a graphics card with at least 2GB of VRAM, and pretty much every modern card has this amount anyway. It will, however, make loading times a bit longer. Select the Steam or CD version of the exe, depending on which one you're installing it for. This just replaces the executable with one that allows 4GB of memory to be used. The second option will apply a startup fix. The reason this is needed is because machines nowadays are obviously a lot faster than the ones during the game's release in 2001. What it would cause is the game to just not start up at all. It also allows us to add a DirectX wrapper, which can take the ancient DX8 rendering API to a much newer DX11 version. This is important not just because it's outdated, but because Windows 10 and up tend to completely ignore settings within DX8. There are two options here. The default is to go with DX8 to DX9, which is the most basic approach that doesn't need anything configured. Going with the DX8 to DX11 option can be useful in scenarios where you need the ability to configure things, like setting the right graphics card for the game to use. For this video, I'm just going to choose DX8 to DX11 option, just so I can show you how to configure DJ Voodoo. So if you want to follow along with what I'm doing, just choose that one, otherwise the other option is completely viable. Next, it will let you pick sound fixes. Sound is a big problem with the game, with the notable issue being that it will cut out randomly. The default one utilizes DSOAL. This should fix some sounds not playing at all, and it also will not cause any loss in sound quality. Second fix essentially just modifies the sound files themselves to a format that actually works, therefore you do not need any sound wrapper. The third is just a backup option if the first wrapper option does not work. So leave it at the first one. If this doesn't work, reinstall the FixPack and try the second one, and if that still has problems, then alternatively try the third one. Now widescreen fix is a no-brainer because you don't want to play in 4:3. Fix for AMD Ryzen 3 should also be checked even if you aren't on AMD. The only reason I see to uncheck this is if you're playing on 2001 hardware, as it may cause issues, but for most of you on modern hardware, it's nice to know this error is fixed. Keep the first two support files checked, as they will just make sure that all the necessary redistributables are installed. At the end, there's a tool that lets you create mods for the game. There's no harm in keeping it checked, but also there's no point in downloading something that we're not going to need, so I'll uncheck it. Now that we've gone through getting the FixPack installed, let's go through the other necessary tweaks that we need to make. Firstly, let's open the game directory and tweak the DX11 wrapper like we mentioned. The executable file is called dgvoodoo.cpl. Now the FixPack has actually done this all for us, but we just want to double check everything is right. In the DirectX tab, for example, just make sure that the watermark is unticked, and also if you're on a high resolution like 4K, then VRAM should be set to 1024. Make sure you obviously hit apply before you close the program down. I also want to recommend two more fixes. The first corrects the JPG errors that you could run into on modern CPUs. It just needs to be downloaded and dragged into the games directory. The second is the difficulty adjustments that I'd recommend. The first one unlocks all of the difficulties without having to complete the game. This is good for obvious reasons for returning and new players. New players can now select easier difficulties, and returning ones can pick the more difficult ones. This is just a registry edit file, so all you need to do is double click it and it will apply all the fixes for you. The second one is removing the broken adaptive difficulty. This feature activates when you play on the standard difficulty mode. It's broken because it doesn't account for player deaths properly, making the difficulty very quickly scale to the hardest values, making certain scenarios more difficult than they should be. Simply replace the difficulty.txt file within the games directory with this new one. Now that we have all the fixes out the way, let's go through some extra essential tweaks that we need to make to ensure we're getting the best possible image quality out of the game. Opening the game will show you the launcher. The first things that you need to make sure is that your graphics card and resolution is set correctly, and acceleration is set to D3D hardware, not software. Click options and then just copy the settings that you see on screen now. You might notice that anti-aliasing is turned off, but that's just because we've come a long way since 2001 in terms of anti-aliasing techniques, so we're going to be adding it ourselves. For anyone on lower end hardware, what I recommend doing is setting the texture options to medium if you're using the enhanced textures. For me though, on a 3080, I had no problem setting everything to the highest. Now in game, set texture sharpness to the maximum and brightness to your liking. Lastly, it's important that you cap your FPS to 144 or lower. With all the fixes that we've added, VSync will be forced on, which will set the S to your monitor's refresh rate. The problem is for me is I'm running a 240Hz monitor, and then therefore it's setting the FPS to 240, which is way too high and may cause issues, so I capped it down to 144 using Riva Tuner. You can also use the Nvidia control panel if you need to do this. The game is completable at or below 144 FPS according to the PC Gaming Wiki. My recommendation then is that if you're on a monitor that has a refresh rate of 144 or lower, then you can just leave everything as default. However, if you're over that refresh rate number, then make sure to cap it back down to 144. Also, if you experience any issues, then just cap it down to 120, and then finally 60. 60 should be without any issues, so if you want to play it safe, you can also just set it to that. Now at this point, all the essential tweaks are done. If you encounter any issues like sound being bugged, you can uninstall the FixPack like you normally would like any other program by going to your control panel and uninstalling it. Then just open the installer again and choose the other options that we explained earlier. Now this section of the video is for some extra tweaks that take the game to the next level, like adding proper anti-aliasing, playing in borderless windowed mode, and some more texture replacement mods. First, let's get 16x anisotropic filtering via your Nvidia or AMD control panel working. You can do this on a global level or via the program settings. This just ensures the textures stay crisp at a further distance. To add anti-aliasing, I recommend two options. The first option is to grab ReShade, choose DirectX 9 during its install, and on the effects page keep the defaults and check immersive effects. Then once you're in game, open the menu by hitting the home key, skip the tutorial, and enable either SMAA or immersive SMAA. Then also tick performance mode. Here is a side-by-side of what these both look like against no anti-aliasing at all. The other option is via your NVIDIA control panel. Unfortunately, I don't know how to do this on AMD, but I'm sure there is a similar method if you follow along. Set anti-aliasing to 2 samples within the launcher settings. Open NVIDIA control panel, go manage 3D settings, program settings, find or add Max Payne, apply these settings on screen in bold, and then hit apply. This is what this method looks like up against immersive SMAA. I personally prefer the ReShade method, but if you do the driver level method, then I'm pretty sure it's less taxing on performance. To get borderless windowed mode, it's really easy. All you need to do is add this INI file within the game's directory. You don't need to put anything inside this file, it will just tell the game to run in borderless windowed mode now. Now besides the texture pack we covered earlier, here are some additional mods that I think you guys might be interested in. These are in no way objectively better than the original, but I think it's a great option to have stuff like this if you want to improve the fidelity. Max Payne Enemies and Items HD improves the enemies, NPCs, Max Payne himself, alongside weapons and items. Max Payne Echo of the Past is also another great mod that restores tons of cut content from the original. The README file shows you all of them if you're interested in what it does. I wouldn't recommend getting this one unless this isn't your first playthrough and you want to experience the game in a new light. Marcomix's Real Weapons is another cool one that replaces the weapon textures with HD ones based on their real life counterparts. This mod however is not suited for a vanilla friendly playthrough of the game as it changes some of the stats of the weapons to make them seem more realistic as well. Worth checking out though if again this isn't your first time playing. You install all of these mods in the same way, just drag the data folder within your games directory and replace when asked. The last extra tweak I want to suggest is my own ReShade preset for the game. This is an extremely lightweight preset. Besides sharpening the game a tiny bit and adding anti-aliasing, what the preset also does is add ray traced global illumination. This is a really basic ray tracing shader by Nice Guy, and if you watch my last video where we tested it, you'll know that it took a single frame off my FPS, so it's really performance friendly. My aim for this is making a super subtle preset that basically just lifts the game ever so slightly whilst keeping that original look. If you like it and want me to make this kind of preset for every game going forward on the channel, then do let me know in the comments. Installing the preset is super easy. Place the INI file anywhere and then install ReShade. If you already have it installed, you can just run the installer again and click Update Effects. And then all you need to do is select my INI in this section when it asks for it. This will only install the effects that I use for the preset. Then in game, just open the ReShade menu and make sure that the preset selected at the top has Retro Renew in it.
The final gunshot was an exclamation mark to everything that had led to this point. I released my finger from the trigger, and then it was over.
After all of this, you'll now have the most definitive way to play the first Max Payne. It's super fun and different to work on games like this, since the no-brainer option is the PC, we get to fully focus our attention on it and cover every little tweak that we can. I still think there is a place for the console versions if you have any particular nostalgia for them, but if you're a new player, I think the PC is the only option that you should go with. So the answer to the question what is the best way to play is definitely the PC version with all of the tweaks that I covered in this video. Whilst we took our time exploring everything, this can all be done pretty quickly. There is one quirk that I wanted to go over, and that's that the video player buttons during the comic book sections are gone. Now this is done on purpose because they are bugged anyway. You can however still use the controls. Here's a screen cap of how you can navigate the comic panels. If you want them back, you can just click F2. But the only thing is, due to the scaling issues, you're going to have to find on the screen where the button is actually clickable, as they're not going to be where they display on your screen. Besides that though, I've played through the entire game with these tweaks before, and have encountered exactly 0 crashes, bugs, or low frame rate. If I helped you in any way, or you just found this entertaining, this is the exact kind of retro game content I provide, so maybe consider subscribing and enabling notifications to stay up to date with my uploads. I also stream here on YouTube and Twitch. We just chat about random stuff and play retro games, so come along if you're interested. I don't have a schedule yet, so it's important you get notifications on your preferred platform. Huge thanks to all the Patreons and YouTube members. You help tremendously at keeping this channel alive. If you'd like to do the same, then you can do so for as low as $1 a month. There's links down below to my Patreon, or you can just join here on YouTube by clicking that join button. Both offer the same perks, so it's just up to you which platform you prefer. At some point I'm going to make a video on the second Max Payne as well, and if it's already up, then you should be able to click through to it on screen now. If not, watch this video where I add ray tracing to retro games using ReShade. See you over there.